What lives in room 302? Detective Leon Mercer despised apartment buildings like the Alexandria. Old converted hotels with narrow hallways, ancient plumbing, and the lingering smell of decades of human occupation. But 4 unexplained deaths in 6 months made the Alexandria impossible to ignore, especially when all victims lived in the same unit, room 302. The building manager, a fidgety man named Harlow, fumbled with an oversized key ring as they approached the door. "4th tenant since January," he muttered. "Department of Health's been here twice. Found nothing." The victims had nothing in common? Leon asked, reviewing his notes. Emily Chen, 34, heart failure. Victor Rosales, 52, stroke. Dana Williams, 27, respiratory arrest. Noah Parker, 41, cerebral hemorrhage. "Nothing except this apartment," Harlow replied. "Different ages, jobs, backgrounds. All died in their sleep, all seemed healthy before moving in. It's killing my rental business." The lock clicked open. Leon entered first, senses heightened. Room 302 appeared disappointingly ordinary, a studio apartment with faded wallpaper, worn hardwood floors, and a kitchenette tucked into one corner. Afternoon light filtered through gauzy curtains covering the single window. "Previous tenants' belongings were cleared out last week," Harlow explained. "I've shampooed the carpet twice since then." Leon circled the space slowly. The apartment felt smaller than its advertised 400 square feet, the ceiling lower than standard. "Building plans in order. No unusual features in this unit. Original blueprints were lost decades ago," Harlow shrugged. "Building dates to 1926. Been remodeled plenty since then." Something about the dimensions nagged at Leon. He paced from wall to wall, counting steps. "Mind if I check the units on either side? And above and below?" The neighboring apartments confirmed his suspicion. Room 302 was smaller than it should be. The hallway wall extended further in the adjacent units, and the floor space was notably larger. "There's a void space," Leon concluded. "Part of this apartment has been walled off." Harlow looked genuinely surprised. "First I've heard of it. Previous owner must have done renovations without proper permits." Armed with a warrant, Leon returned the next day with a structural engineer. Thermal imaging revealed a cold spot behind the north wall, a space approximately 3 feet wide running the length of the apartment. "Could be an old dumbwaiter shaft or laundry chute," the engineer suggested. Buildings from this era often had service features that became obsolete. The wall came down easily, revealing not a shaft, but a narrow corridor barely wide enough for an adult to traverse sideways. The air that rushed out was cold and stale, carrying an unidentifiable organic smell. "This isn't on any building plan I've seen," Harlow insisted, peering nervously into the darkness. Leon's flashlight beam revealed peeling wallpaper in an outdated pattern and a floor covered in decades of dust, except for a narrow path of disturbance down the center, as if something had been dragged repeatedly through the corridor. At the end of the passage, they discovered a small room, perhaps 6 feet square. Empty except for a single wooden chair facing the wall. On the chair sat an antique leather-bound book. "It's a diary," Leon said, carefully opening the brittle cover. Dated 1932. The journal belonged to Dr. Elias Werner, apparently a resident of the Alexandria when it was still a residential hotel. The entries documented Werner's descent into obsession after the death of his young wife from tuberculosis. Increasingly deranged passages described Werner's conviction that he could thin the barrier between worlds through a combination of spiritualist rituals and pseudoscientific experiments. The final entry, dated October 17, 1932, read simply, "The wall is permeable now. I will pass through tonight. If successful, I shall never return to this side. If I fail, may God have mercy." Historical records confirmed Werner's residence at the Alexandria. He was reported missing in late 1932, his room found empty with no signs of foul play. The case was never solved. So some doctor disappears 90 years ago, Harlow said. What's that got to do with people dying in their sleep? Leon didn't answer, his attention caught by something on the back wall of the hidden room. Faint markings in the plaster, almost like handprints, but elongated and distorted. The forensics team found no fingerprints in the hidden space except those of the construction crew that sealed it decades ago. The dust samples contained nothing unusual. The journal was authentic to the period but yielded no physical evidence beyond its age. With nothing concrete to act on, Leon reluctantly closed the investigation. Room 302 was sealed pending further review, the corridor resealed with modern drywall. 3 months passed. The Alexandria faded from Leon's immediate concerns as new cases demanded attention. Then Harlow called. "We've had an incident," the manager said, voice tight with stress. "Unit 301, the apartment next door to 302. Tenant found dead this morning." Leon arrived to find paramedics removing a body bag. The victim, James Harris, 38, had apparently died of sudden respiratory failure during the night. No history of asthma or respiratory issues, the attending physician noted. Preliminary finding suggests his lungs simply stopped. Leon examined the apartment carefully. Nothing seemed amiss until he noticed faint markings on the wall shared with room 302, subtle discolorations in the paint, vaguely handprint-shaped but too large, the fingers too long. That night, Leon returned to the Alexandria with specialized equipment borrowed from the university's paranormal research department, equipment he would have scoffed at months earlier. In room 301, he set up thermal cameras, EMF detectors, and audio recorders. Then he waited. At 3:17 a.m., the temperature dropped suddenly. The EMF meter spiked. Through the thermal camera, Leon watched in horror as the wall shared with room 302 seemed to bulge inward, as if something on the other side was pressing against a membrane. The audio recorder captured nothing but Leon's own breathing and the building's normal settling sounds. But when played back at half speed, beneath the white noise emerged what sounded like whispered words, "Thin here. So thin now." Leon backed toward the door as the wall continued to distort. The thermal camera showed cold spots moving across the surface, roughly hand-shaped but with impossible proportions, fingers too numerous and extended. Something was trying to push through. Leon fled the apartment, nearly colliding with a sleepy tenant in the hallway. By morning, when he returned with backup, the wall showed no signs of disturbance. The recording, when analyzed by the department's audio specialist, contained nothing but ambient noise. Without evidence, Leon's concerns were dismissed as stress-induced imagination. His supervisor suggested a vacation. Instead, Leon began researching the Alexandria's history obsessively. He discovered that room 302 had experienced an unusual number of tenant deaths dating back to at least the 1950s, though most were attributed to natural causes. More disturbing were the accounts of several former tenants who reported sleep disturbances, breathing difficulties, and vivid nightmares of being watched by something hiding in the walls. One former resident, now in her 80s, recalled staying in room 302 as a child in the 1940s. "Mother said I had night terrors," she told Leon. "But I wasn't dreaming. Something would stand beside my bed each night, leaning over me. Something with too many fingers." Armed with historical evidence and the testimony of former residents, Leon convinced his department to reopen the investigation. Room 302 was unsealed, the hidden corridor exposed once more. This time, they brought ground-penetrating radar to examine the walls of the hidden room. The results showed an anomaly behind the back wall, a space that shouldn't exist according to the building's layout, a void between room 302 and the exterior wall. When they broke through, they found not another room but a strange distortion in space itself. The opening seemed to lead nowhere and everywhere at once, the dimensions somehow wrong, as if the laws of geometry had been locally suspended. The engineers fled in panic. Building inspectors declared the entire floor structurally unsound and ordered an evacuation. As residents hurriedly packed their belongings, Leon remained in a hidden room, transfixed by the spatial anomaly. In the distorted space, he could almost perceive movement, something shifting just beyond normal perception. The air around the anomaly shimmered like heat waves, though the temperature was freezing. Leon reached toward the distortion, fingers trembling. Just before contact, he pulled back, skin tingling with pins and needles. Where his hand had nearly touched the anomaly, the air now rippled with greater intensity. That night, the Alexandria was evacuated. City officials cited structural concerns, gas leaks, and electrical hazards, more palatable explanations than the truth. The building was scheduled for demolition within the month. Leon couldn't stay away. 2 nights before the planned demolition, he broke through the police barricade and returned to room 302. The hidden corridor seemed wider now, the room at the end larger than he remembered. The anomaly had grown, consuming most of the back wall. As he stood watching, a hand emerged from the distortion, bone-white and impossibly proportioned, with too many joints in the elongated fingers. It groped blindly at the air before withdrawing. Leon stumbled backward, fumbling for the doorway. As he turned to flee, he glimpsed movement from the corner of his eye, not from the anomaly, but from the chair in the center of the room. The diary lay open, pages turning by themselves as if caught in a breeze, though the air was still. The final page, previously blank, now contained fresh writing in an antique script. The barrier thins wherever I dwell too long. Soon I shall need another vessel to continue my work. You have been chosen, detective. Leon escaped the Alexandria that night, but something followed him home, something that lives in the walls of his apartment now, that watches him as he sleeps, that whispers in a voice just below the threshold of hearing. The Alexandria was demolished on schedule. The lot remains empty, developers citing contamination concerns. Room 302 no longer exists. But sometimes, in the darkest hours before dawn, Leon feels the walls of his bedroom bulge inward slightly, as if something on the other side is testing their strength. And he knows, with terrible certainty, that what began in room 302 didn't end there. Dr. Werner found his way through. And now, he's looking for a way back.